Senator Wayne gets here in time. I promise, hopefully.
All right. We'll open the hearing on LB676, introduced by Chairwoman Linehan.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Lindstrom and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Lou Ann Linehan, LOUANNLINEHAN, and I'm here to introduce LB676. LB676 was intended to be a placeholder regarding the taxation of little cigars as cigarettes. Some of you will recall that after the passage of LB329 in 2019, the Department of Revenue issued a guidance document interpreting the law to mean that certain little cigars would be reclassified as cigarettes if the product met certain requirements. There were lawsuits filed over this interpretation, and during the past interim, we held a hearing on LR477 to gather additional information on this matter. It is my understanding that the lawsuits have been settled, and just this week, the department added to the guidance document, which now provides an exception from the definition of a cigarette or designated tobacco products. The exception basically provides that if the tobacco product is taxed as a cigar under federal, then it will not be taxed as a cigarette in Nebraska. Manufacturers or importers of little cigars must provide copies of applicable tax forms submitted to the U.S. Department of Treasury, Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, or an affidavit from an executive officer of the manufacturer or importer attesting that they report and pay the federal tax in accordance with 26 U.S.C. 5701A and 5702A. Thank you. I would be happy to answer any questions, but I think there are people behind me that would be better qualified.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
First proponent. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Lindstrom, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Sean Kelly, SEANKELLEY, appearing today as a registered lobbyist on behalf of the Cigar Association of America. As Chairman Linehan noted, this issue has been resolved. We're very grateful for your leadership, Senator Linehan, on this issue, and we're glad it's behind us. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Next proponent. Seeing none. Any opponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Daniel Muehlman, DANIEL MUELLELEMAN. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Nebraska Attorney General's Office, and just here to testify in nominal opposition to LB676. As Senator Linehan mentioned, the issue has been resolved. We have circulated a letter to members of the committee explaining it in more detail. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm not supposed to be sitting here.
So I guess I've
forgot.
never seen. So if it's been resolved, then why the opposition?
What was that?
I said if the issue's been resolved, why the opposition?
Just nominal opposition to the presentation of the bill.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Any other opponents? Any neutral testifiers? Seeing none, Senator Linehan, if you'd like to close. Senator Linehan waives closing, and that'll end the hearing on LB676. Oh, I'm sorry, and let me check the letters here. No written testimony on LB676 and no letters for the record on LB676. And that'll close the hearing on LB676. We will now move to LB679, also introduced by Chairwoman Linehan.
LB679. Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Lindstrom and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Lou Ann Lenahan, LOUANN, and I am here to introduce LB679. This issue was brought to me by a former state senator. He found it to be nearly impossible to pay local city occupation tax on his bed and breakfast. Not only was it difficult to find the right person to accept the payment, he was frustrated that, in this day and age, the tax cannot be paid electronically. LB679 was intended to address this issue, but unfortunately, the green copy included all city occupation taxes on lodging. My intent was restricted to cities of second class and villages. This is what AM 406 does. It is a white copy amendment. Do they have the amendment? Okay, thank you. It is a white copy amendment that replaces the original bill. It applies only to second-class cities and villages. It requires the tax commissioner to collect these taxes on behalf of the cities and villages and then distribute the taxes appropriately. The tax allows the commissioner to retain a 3% administrative fee as usual, but I am open to eliminating that fee if these small cities would be affected. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
First proponent on LB 679. Seeing none. Any opponents to LB 679?
Senator Lindstrom, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Rex, Lynnrex, representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities. We're here today in opposition to LB 679, just the green copy as well as the amendment. We do think that basically if committee chair or council wants to give us the names of the city involved, we can certainly contact them and help them figure out how they need to be collecting these. We just think that it's inappropriate to be doing it this way. Just in terms of the fact that cities do this sort of thing all the time. They understand how to do it. Apparently there's one or two that don't. To that end, we will work with them. And I will say this too, the tax commissioner's office has always been willing to assist them as well in terms of how they go about in complying with this. So with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Lindstrom and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Joe Kohut, K-O-H-O-U-T, and I appear today on behalf of the United Cities of Sarpy County, a coalition of the mayors of the cities of Bellevue, Gretna, Papillion, Springfield, and La Vista. We oppose the green copy of LB 679, which would require the tax commissioner to collect lodging taxes imposed by cities and villages. It is their understanding that the cities and villages in Nebraska do not have the authority to collect lodging taxes. Rather, the local jurisdictions may choose to implement a hotel-motel occupation tax. As you are likely aware, the purpose of an occupation tax is to generate revenue. Any class of city may collect an occupation tax within its boundaries and must apply it uniformly and fairly to the types of businesses on which it is imposed. The occupation tax rate, which is set by the city imposing it, may vary from city to city. Because this is a local tax, the mayors of the United Cities are uncertain why it would be necessary for the tax commissioner to assume responsibility for collecting this tax. Not only would this delay the receipt of funds necessary to provide municipal services, but we would experience a 3% revenue loss as a result of the proposed administrative fee, and we appreciate Senator Linehan's desire to remove that provision. So we have reviewed the recent amendment, and that's the reason you have me instead of Mayor Kindig today, because it doesn't apply to first-class cities anymore. However, under this most recent version, it still would apply to two members, Gretna and Springfield, that would continue to be under the provisions of this act. The city of Gretna does have in place a $5 per bed occupation fee that they charge on these types of facilities. And while Springfield does not have an occupation and tax for lodging, as the metropolitan area grows towards the southwest, it is likely that they would see growth and a desire for amenities particularly with this growth of businesses in the area. In the meantime, we must oppose 679 and would ask that the committee not advance.
There you go. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Any other opponents? Seeing none, any neutral testifiers? Seeing none, we had one letter for the record in opposition and no written testimony on LB 679. Senator Linehan. Senator Linehan waives closing, and that'll end the hearing on LB 679. We will now open the hearing on LB 329, introduced by Senator Wayne.
I have like 3 hearings going this afternoon, and it's been great.
Did you take over?
Okay. My name is Justin Wayne, JUSTINWAYNE, and I represent Legislative District 13, which is North Omaha and Northeast Douglas County. So this is a good bill. It's really simple. It raises money and distributes it back. Probably can build that 4-lane highway going to North Fork. But I recognize that it's probably not wise for us to do a tax when we have $100 million possibly on the floor and with COVID. So what I am passing out is the amendment that I dropped last week or yesterday. And it's a bill that I thought I introduced this year. Well, actually, I thought I introduced it last year, which I did, but I forgot it was a new biennium, so I thought it was still in the meat hopper, but it wasn't. It got IPP'd when. So, here's what we're going to talk about today. This bill is actually a bill that, in combined with a bill in judiciary, I think will not only reduce our prison population, but it will make sure that we can invest in our workforce and grow our economy. It sounds odd that we're having a discussion about prisons in this committee, but it's actually a felon tax credit bill for workers. But how it ties to this other bill is, well, first let me talk a little bit about why it's important. Studies have shown multiple times that post-prison outcomes tend to be better if people have work release programs. And when I look at what's going on in our prison population and what's going on in our community corrections, what we often have, you have a community corrections here in Lincoln, community corrections in McCook, community corrections in Omaha. But we have people from throughout the state. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for somebody in Omaha to go work at Logier or a place down by OCC and then go back to Scottsbluff. So what LB 334 does, it adopts the Community Work Release Treatment Center Act. And I'm not going to read everything because you know you've been here for a while and it's a beautiful day out. But the key to these two bills working together, and where I got this idea was from TIOSA actually. There was a financial bill and education bill that went together, coincide, and that's how TIOSA got created, is when you put these two packages together, you have to look no farther than in Hastings, and that's the next tab. In Bristol Station, and actually one of our colleagues used to be on the board, maybe still is on the board, and this happens at the federal level. At the federal level, they have contracts for a halfway house where they continue to work with individuals and have a very high success rate. So the model that I'm bringing here to this committee regarding the tax credit, which on tab 3, and I am sorry for going a little fast, I wanted to point out that this allows people to receive 65%, and it's the committee statement. And the reason why that's important is, first, this came out of committee last year, 8-0. I expect nothing less from this great committee. But more importantly, it gives an idea of what this was and who was against it, which was nobody. We didn't have a priority last year, so it didn't really go anywhere. But this year, I think in conjunction with what we're talking about, we can mirror these two programs to allow halfway houses throughout the state. And when I talk to employers across the state in the Urban Affairs Committee, these entry-level positions, these manufacturing jobs, they're always looking for people on second and third shift. And if you have somebody in Scottsbluff who is in prison and needs to get released back out of prison back into society, having a job makes a difference. But the big, I think one of the interesting facts about what happens here is if you look at the fiscal note, and I got the fiscal note from last year, it's only about $2 million, and it is a lot of money. But if we were to reduce, and this is back on the first tab, if we were to reduce the prison recidivism rate simply by 5%, because right now we release roughly 2,000 people per year from our prison system. Right now we have 900 people in community corrections. That's 900 people who are low risk, who could apply for these halfway houses across the state. If we just reduce it by 5%, whether it's the low end of 25% or it's the high end of 30% as far as the recidivism rate, we're actually still coming out ahead of $1.4 million to $1.7 million of the savings of reducing that recidivism cost. So by providing the people an opportunity to work, we are filling the gaps in our communities who are looking for employees, and we're also filling the gap to make sure that we don't have a high recidivism rate, that we are lowering it. So it's a win-win for everybody. Again, I want to emphasize, and I'm trying to keep this a little short, the original bill is a great bill, but I understand the dynamics of where we're at and what we're doing, and raising the gas tax on the wholesale is probably a hard sell right now. So I'm proposing an alternative with this amendment that was filed on the floor, so this hearing is meeting our requirements, that a tax credit for those who are working, who are coming out of the system, who are on parole, is a benefit not just to our prison system, but to our entire state. And it allows these smaller communities like Hastings, who already has a program at the federal level, to work with individuals at the state level to fill employment gaps, to work with almost a public-private partnership with local businesses and economies to get people who are going to be released back into their community a stable job. If they jam out, which we have 900 people jamming out every year, which means they get their stuff and they're released that day. If they don't have a place to live, they don't have a job, oftentimes they just turn back around to the same people they went in with. So this is a way to solve that problem. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you. Senator Wayne, are there any questions from the committee? So we had this bill last year and we passed it out?
Yeah, 8-0.
Okay. Senator Breezy.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this, Senator Wayne. Last year's fiscal note should be roughly accurate?
I would think it would be the same based on, and where they got the fiscal note, if when you read through it, is basic, that's the last page, sorry. Where they got the fiscal note was based off of Iowa, who has a similar bill. And because of the cap, it's kind of not to exceed 20,000 per individual. It should be roughly the same.
Should be the same, okay, thank you.
The easiest way to find out is to get it to the floor and they send me a new A bill.
Thank you, Senator Breezy. Other questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you. I have to go to government, so I will waive closing.
Okay. Do we have proponents? Do we have opponents? Do we have opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Mo Jamshidi, Deputy Director for Operations, and currently the Acting Director, spelled MOEJAMSHIDI. I'm basically here to oppose the original LB 329. And you have my testimony in file. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You're so brave. Okay, gotta respect. Do we have any questions for this witness? Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Anyone wishing to testify in a neutral position? We had proponents. Am I reading this right? Proponents, John Cannon, NACO, neutral. Tim Krieger, Nebraska oh, that was the original bill too, probably. Okay, so we don't have any letters for written testimony. Okay. Happy 4-day weekend. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,